jobs that are out. Crikey. When you're looking at what AI jobs are out there, it seems to be like a really messy picture, and trying to get a steer on how things are going to go is also just really, really messy. So you're getting told very different things by very different reports coming in. So the World WEF, which published The Future of Jobs, said AI will create more jobs than it displaces. There'll be a net gain of around 78 million jobs globally by 2030. Which is an incredibly tight timescale for that to happen in. But when you kind of look at that in a little bit more depth, it looks like most of the growth is going to be concentrated in AI adjacent and human-centric roles, but also that a lot of it is in developing economies. So we're looking at green industries, teachers' care, health, and agriculture. Of course, if there's room there for, UX in those industries, those sectors are the ones that are kind of worth watching. But, according to the Department for Education and also the IMF, 60% of jobs in the UK are exposed, and half of these, which is 30% of UK jobs, will be negatively affected. A very gloomy picture, but there's no timescale in that. So you're just like, well, is that like, also before 2030, or is that going to take longer? It's very unclear. And then you also get, vendors who are saying that we'll need at least, 500,000 or more additional workers within the next 2 years, actually within the AI field. So implementing, maintaining, and, this new and emerging tech. And it's just kind of tricky to figure out, like, if that is people within the UK, or if that can include people offshoring. And exactly what those jobs are is just all a bit vague at the moment. But one of the bigger things that I think is worth considering is like how on earth we can adapt quickly enough for this estimated job losses and new jobs emerging, because there's going to be a lot of retraining and training yourself if it's new term. And so even within the Institute of Public Policy Research, they're saying between 0.5 and 1.5 million job losses near term. Longer term, they're saying even, higher. So it's very kind of difficult to figure all this stuff out. And it's not surprising if you can't figure it out. Oops, not going. There we go. So if you feel like your head's exploding, my head has been exploding as well, just trying to get to the truth in all of this. It's really not easy to find the truth. And I'd like to be telling you, a much more positive story about where to go, when and how. But I don't have that information. What I can say is that the UX job market is being affected by things which are outside of AI specifically as well. We know that as accurately as we can get right now, based on Indeed, a report that came from Indeed, which is a pretty credible industry source, there's been a 71% drop in UX research listings since 2022, and 59% of team hiring freezes. Now, I'm getting kind of news through the grapevine that things are changing. They're kind of beginning to realize that some problems have come up and that they need people like us to actually make sure that these projects work. But we're still hanging in the balance there. The reasons are there's macroeconomic uncertainty, there's rising costs, high interest rates, weak UK growth, all of these sorts of things, taxes, housing market is stagnant. The tech sector contraction, there's been mass layoffs in very large organizations, tech organizations, and there's a lot of good people there. So there's a lot of good people on the market right now as well, and they're cascaded into it. And then there's the ability to offshore and get compliance to offshore much more easily and cheaply than we could ever in the past. So there are entire companies that are set up to do that, and it's a case of filling in a few forms, and it's quick and easy, and it's pretty robust, right? So things are being offshored to India as well, other places like that. And then the other thing, of course, is the redirection to AI, the reallocation to an AI budget hasn't at this point meant that they're hiring large UX teams. They've really been hiring a lot of technical people up till now. Where UX hiring is focused is in public sector. So if you've got like security clearance, or if you're really focused on government type work, and you're able to take on full-time work because they're really looking for full-time employees, those are good ones for you. If you're entry level, funded apprenticeship schemes are actually replacing a lot of the skilled roles, or have been up until now. So if you're like a, quite experienced or skilled person, you're really kind of noticing a massive drop off in the more skilled roles. But I think there's going to be like a rebalancing quite soon. Anyway, within these areas, there's also fintech UX, and then there's specialisms like accessibility, AI ethics, and service design. So there's a lot of crossover with these sorts of things. If you have those skills, or if you want to focus on those skills in order to get a job, it's probably a good idea. So current state tensions. I don't know if you've read the AI playbook. So this is by Andrew Ning. If you see any of his courses, there's loads of them in Coursera and other places like that. He's written a thing called the AI Transformation Playbook, How to Lead Your Company into the AI Era. And I think up until now, a lot of companies have been playing by this playbook. Government, of course, is just newly introduced a new playbook, which I think Bobby's going to cover briefly. But up until now, it's really been about executing pilot projects to gain momentum, building an in-house AI team, very much a focus on data science, engineering, very much about trying not to be dependent on external vendors, and then about providing really broad but not very deep AI skills within an organization. There's also this call to develop an AI strategy, which, it seems to me like a very obvious thing. But when I'm looking at what the AI playbook says and what's actually happening, or the experiences that I've had working in AI projects, I'm not seeing a strong link to business needs. So I'm not seeing that strong link to strategy. And that to me just is a bit of a red flag. The other thing that they ask you to do is develop internal and external communications, and users and talent are right at the bottom of this list. It's very much been an afterthought up till this point. How does this fit with business needs? Well, unless they've got a really strong AI strategy, it's really not. Is it fitting with strategy? Is it fitting with compliance? Is it fitting with their growth needs? Quite frequently, no is the answer. Is there a business need? Is there a clear path to return on investment? Can we deliver on budget, on time? Do they have the people to implement? Is the money better spent elsewhere, which is really a big issue when you're going through a recession, when you've got tax and all these other things happening, cost of living going up. That is kind of one of the key things that business leaders are looking at. But the other thing they ask, which is right at the bottom, unfortunately for all of us, is the user need worth the UX investment? So it really is the last thing that they kind of consider. And we're right down there at the bottom of their list. However, what we've found in very recent reports is that 95% of AI projects are failing. There's been a lack of strategic alignment, as we can see from the last slide. People are building teams before they've even got a problem that they understand. Again, saw that in the last slide. Training without a return on investment focus. Big strategies, weak delivery, not having the people in place, not knowing how you're going to organize the people once the AI is in place. Over communicating the vision and under delivering is another issue, and missing user needs is coming up again and again. So we are being highlighted, one of 6 major failings of, the reasons why AI projects fail. So the tide is turning, which is really good news. Most AI projects collapse because they fail to align with business priorities, return on investment, implementation capacity, and relevance to users. And that's from MIT. I've got a whole bunch of references at the end for anybody who likes to read up and read into those reports in detail. So One of the things I'd say about taking on projects, because what I'm going to do now is talk about some of the projects I've worked on as case studies, is that big data lies. It lies not even deliberately, but you will be told when you're starting a project and you're asking questions, trying to get to the bottom of like what their data means, that they'll say there's no evidence for that. There's no evidence of this or that. There's no evidence of that. Then they'll say, well, we didn't actually collect the data to know if that's true or false. And then when you dig into it a little bit more, sometimes they're saying we collected so much data that we don't really know what it means anymore. So what you've got is this big data, which is an aggregation of a lot of stuff, like a big ball of plasticine, beginning to go gray, beginning to smudge, and it's quite difficult to pick it apart. So this is the first case study that I want to talk about. I'm obviously keeping these things anonymous. It was 6 months in delivery. There was an AI chatbot. There was also video content. And the hypothesis was that this piece of work was going to reduce calls to customer services. There was a high-level need in research, which they looked at from a research library, which was based on aggregated data. But they didn't actually talk to any of the user researchers before they started this project. So they were working with that, out the box, high level user need. And we were brought in, to validate the design after it had gone live, which was quite surprising. To start the project, we did a review of attitudes for AI gen content. And we also did some run-throughs, task-based scenarios within the live website, which is pretty standard user research stuff. What we found was it was difficult to find. It was also a last resort when searching. It didn't add value, didn't fulfill a user need, no AI label. So what we got back was, especially from a company that really requires a lot of trust, was that they thought that we were testing fraud websites on them. They actually thought that it was a deliberate thing to see if they could spot it was fraud. But the other thing was like, in terms of the chatbot, it just couldn't match the complex personalized information needs. And those were updating very rapidly because we were living in kind of very volatile economic time. So these were all what I'd call real rookie mistakes. It's like there was one instance of a video that told you to press a button to get to a form, and the waterline cut the video off so you couldn't see the video. So people were just going straight to the form. Total rookie mistake stuff. So this is the sort of thing you need to watch out for, and just to know that you will be able to add value when you go into these projects. Because a lot of the time they're being run very quickly. They're being pushed through because it's, there's a lot of funding behind it, and they're not being thought through or even designed properly. And I know for a fact that the designers were not comfortable with it being published the way it was. They had been kind of brought in last minute, same as me, just to rush things through. So the next thing I want to say is that any fool can make something complex, and even very clever people can be foolish sometimes. And I've worked with some really clever people. So in this project, I was working with really the global leaders in a particular area of medical research. And I was also working with a small agency and a global pharmaceutical. Now, the project, the app that we were developing was based on best practice, and it was support for lifestyle change. And it was for patients who are resistant to lifestyle change. So it was a very small subset inside of a very big data set. So back to that ball of plasticine, there's literally 10 years worth of smudged plasticine there that you're trying to unpick. And the solution was a symptom tracking app. And they'd got to a certain point with it, realized that they had some blockers and they weren't comfortable moving forward. And they brought me in at that point. There was some existing user research based on this, which had kind of, I think, been pushed ahead, the tracking app. But it just felt to me that there was something really missing there. So while I was putting stuff through ethics, which takes, if anybody's worked in medical research, it takes a long time to go through, I ran a very fast, very lightweight ethnography in an online user forum, and I got some really interesting results. So my proposal was to them, can we test, at the same time as testing this tracking app, can we also test an emotional support feature. And we'll do this using a longitudinal study. So none of this kind of fast task-based stuff, because it doesn't really give us evidence if there's been a lifestyle change or not. We're going to do it like over several weeks, and we're going to check in with them and see what they use. And we're going to have the data from the tracking app. We'll have the data from the use of the other app, and we'll see what happens. And what we found was 5 out of 7 made positive changes to their lifestyle, and they all attributed it to the emotional support feature and not the feature that came out of the big data set on medical research. So that was a kind of real kind of win, I suppose, for us, and went on to get private beta release, and also it pivoted in the end an entire product suite. So it was like really kind of great to see that, and really one of the most emotional projects I've worked on, seeing people who were terminally ill actually change their lives and turn them around. So the next thing is about bang for budget, which is a big thing you're hearing about an awful lot these days. And I've been asked to write tenders for people. So I'm just going to run through one of them that I've worked on quite recently, which was, they're really aiming to engage as many people in a short time scale as possible. So we've got 6 months to deliver. The budget's 30 days. I mean, to me, this is crazy. It's proper fractional UXR. They're wanting to engage as many people as possible as participants. So, gotta love a challenge. But so the way that we're running this is very much days running ecosystem user discovery, then running some qualitative workshops with very kind of high level experts, running through multi-criteria scoring and heat mapping. So we've got our gap analysis, going to the people who've been identified from the heat map for qualitative workshops. And then we're going to run some large scale qualitative workshops and expert panel discussions. So we're bringing in large community groups later on where they can contribute in different ways. And there's going to be a handoff that enables the experts who are already in the organization to then take that work forward. There's also like this potential of next step concept designs and community feedback, which we do like task-based analysis, the usual kind of stuff there. Now, this project very much relies on buy-in from influential champions, which is one thing that, we know that we've got. And we're also going to rely quite heavily on engaging experts that have expert knowledge. But it is very much like similar to this first project, in that we have to kind of make sure that once we know that expert knowledge, we're also able to go back to the community and engage that community and bring them in. So the way that we're managing to do it in such a short time scale is very much about automating using AI and using facilitation-led synthesis, which you may or may not have had the experience of. But AI we can use for planning, comms, decision capture, all this stuff. We're absolutely minimizing travel. So there's no travel. They're all video engagements. We're going to share ownership. So what doesn't if it gets produced in the meeting, that is it. That's the handover. So it's very much facilitating that and ensuring that we've got buy-in at that point. And then sharing that information centrally, both internally and with a larger community, validating at scale. Again, I'm kind of moving into stuff that would normally I don't get my hands on tools like Power BI, and in a large organization, that's for the data analysts alone and not for someone like me. But in this case, I can do these things. And then also using like one-to-many, using very structured workshops with breakout groups, all of this sort of thing, gathering post-it notes, having that whole board available, and then running some on-the-fly documentation so that it's all captured and you get that buy-in at that point. The potential extension is, AI-driven prompted concepts. So if I was to take this through to an alpha, I'd actually be getting people to develop prompts, putting them into ChatGPT or any other kind of tool that can quickly deliver a poster that advertises something or a piece of software, so that we can rough something up and just gather all that stuff together as well. So the last thing I want to talk about is about really not knowing your limits when it comes to user research right now, or UX right now. I mean, I find it quite interesting in that the time that I've been working within UX, there was, you know, at one point I would do a lot of things. I would do a bit of front end development. I would do user research. You know, I would also, you know, I would just be kind of involved in a lot of stuff, even some quant stuff, all of this sort of thing, some service design, definitely mapping, definitely user journeys. And for a while, that was almost like, I don't know if out of fashion's the right thing to say, but I think it was probably a strategic decision, something to do with how you can resource from other areas, because they were trying to onboard so many UXers all at once that they found that they could, you know, use people from geography and social sciences to do more of the kind of qualitative stuff, your qualitative research alongside that. So, you know, for me, this is almost like a return to old school. It's like going back to some of those skills that I used to use all the time before. So I'm going to talk you through this contribution I made to AI strategy for a very big global organization.
Somebody.
Sorry? Okay.
Jalapenos. Yeah, there is.
Can you go on mute, please?
One quarter bottle is left.
Sorry about that. Okay, so this was for a really large global organization.
Where you in Morrison?
There's somebody talking just now? Did you switch your
maybe
mic
after
on
1 or 2 days.
All right, got it.
That's
Okay,
a
thanks.
tip. I keep meeting yourself, Morna.
I know. All right. So this was a short project where I was contributing to AI strategy. So it was a very large project. It'd been greenlit, big data project, bringing lots and lots of databases together. It was a UK, USA type project. So another one of these international ones where you're working across multiple jurisdictions. And I arrived quite early on in the kind of development of the team. There was no product manager, and the tech people, the people running the migration were, you know, running ahead at a crazy speed. And there seemed to be an awful lot of scope creep. You know, it's one of those things where you have one document saying, we're going to do like, our MVP includes 3 things, you know, these 3 specific items, you know, and what you found, like the migration team were working towards 30. And you're just like, hold on a minute, how did this happen? You know, there was also existing UR, which had been a massive PR win, I think, for the UX team. But it was really difficult to interpret because it wasn't very well labeled, and there was nobody there to explain it to me really, to dig into it and actually understand what had happened. And even the people who had taken part in it couldn't really remember what had happened. They couldn't remember what the outputs were or any of these sorts of things. And we had loads of members joining midstream as well. So one of the things that really struck me working for this company, because I'd been working in the UK predominantly, is that, you know, for the first time again, people are like expecting me to use my mapping skills, to use my business skills. Whereas before, like I really, you know, I couldn't step on anyone's toes in some businesses. It was really very much stick to your lane stuff. And so this is different when you're looking at a global market. And that's an important thing to know about, because those skills can be really, really useful. Anyway, so what I did, I mean, if I'm totally honest, it took me a while to get my feet, mainly because of this difference in expectations and all of this sort of thing. But once I did, and the new product manager came on board, I was able to work with him to define a long-term AI vision, because there wasn't a vision of what the product was. So that was like a really like interesting, useful thing to do, because we have at one end, we've got some of the SMEs who were extremely, extremely skilled, you know, so skilled, very much data people. and they see the detail. They're all about the detail and they're all about precision, but there was no overarching or defining vision of what we're actually producing at the end of the day. And I went back to something that I hadn't looked at in years, which was jobs to be done. And I remember looking at jobs to be done several years ago and thinking it really wasn't up to scratch and it wasn't going to be good for many things that I was involved in at that point in time. But when you're working internally with an organization, and it's an AI project, one of the things that there really is useful to do is understand what jobs are being done by humans, break that down into tasks, and then understand what tasks can then be done by the AI, what needs support from the human, and where the human needs to work independently, free from AI. So that was the approach I took. I had this kind of, obviously, thing about like creating maps and doing this sort of thing is all about making the complex simple. So working with a product manager, I really kind of worked on this 2B product map, just mapping out where all the jobs were, mapping out the ones which were going to be shifted into it would just be a clean migration. So a lot of jobs were frankly not going to be needed once the migration was complete. And then looking at the jobs that were in those early stages and where those people might be placed and what tasks needed those different kind of support mechanisms to be in the loop and all this sort of thing. I also, as part of this, highlighted the oversight of an absolute key user group, which was just, part of the messiness of starting something. But I mean, for me, the key user group was the end user and not the people actually using the system, although they were obviously users that we needed to look at in a lot of detail. And then I kind of went into this clarifying the AI versus human versus hybrid versus task ownership. And out of that, I identified 5 R&D streams for task analysis. Alongside that, I delivered a jobs to be done map, which was just looking at a very thin slice of the product. So that was, and I looked at the kind of personas and the task analysis for those things in particular. So we'd made a really good start with just kind of pseudo journey and pseudo personas as well. The other thing I did while I was there, which I realized that people really needed and is probably being missed out a lot, especially when things are being rushed through at pace, is I onboarded new team members with a kickoff presentation that consolidated the user research and also brought in these kind of new ideas so that they actually had much more of an idea of like the experience of people on the ground, and also what this new product could bring. So it was about aligning teams behind that shared vision. And then the other thing, which was just messing with everybody's head, was the jargon that was used. I mean, I wouldn't call it jargon, it was technical language. So I created a tech dictionary for non-experts as well. But yeah, I spent quite a bit of time trying to understand the limits, and I wish I'd jumped in earlier and just used tools that I knew how to use. But anyway, that's how you get involved in the strategic stuff. So in terms of turning the tide, I think like we can all be part of this turning tide because it is happening kind of now. It's kind of doubling down on your core skills, ensuring alignment between the business as well as the user needs, onboarding and uniting teams, remembering big data lies because it's so aggregated to be meaningless, identifying rookie mistakes, you will see them, establishing if there's a user need, which users are likely to switch, and then providing backup evidence. So I always look for internal and external analysis as well and get quant data wherever I can. And the role adjacent upskilling is, I think, the stuff that we all need to be kind of focusing in on now because there are fewer jobs and there are people trying to mash a lot of jobs together. So I'd say leverage AI to automate, see if you can shape the long-term vision with mapping, support implementation with real task analysis and get into the detail of that, provide greater certainty with quant methods, deliver UX efficiently, deliver it at scale, use on-the-fly methods, and use AI creatively with users as well. And if you're feeling really adventurous and you're comfortable with it, you can also try vibe coding, either with either for user stimuli or as a kind of intermediate before you hand off to UX design. And that is the end of my talk. You can get in touch with me here if anybody wants to, for any questions or curious about anything, please do. And I've got a whole bunch of references at the end. I think those are, Bobby, is this slide deck going out to people?
Yes, I'm going to say yes. Please share it after. In fact, we both don't we? So yeah, I'll be sending it out. But yeah, big round of applause, virtual or otherwise.
Thank you.
Morna. Fascinating talk. And yeah, really interesting to see actual case studies. You've done a lot more AI focused projects than I have. So does anyone have any questions for Morna? You can either add them to the chat, and happy for Morna to answer those in the chat while I'm doing my piece, or do you want to just come off mute and quickly ask her a question? We've got a little bit of time.
I'll stop sharing. There you go, Bobby. Are there any questions?
We've got a hand up. Gordon Triovska, how you doing?
So, hi, thank you so much for the presentation. I found it really valuable. I have one question. So, during my internship, I realized that a lot of people are starting to kind of put UI UX in the marketing field. So I just want to know your take on that. I just want to know your take on that. Like, do you think it belongs in the marketing field or more so in the computing tech field?
I think there's different flavors of UX. I mean, if you're doing UX in marketing, there's a lot of different skill sets. I'd say you're using a lot more quant methods, and you're going to be working, you're getting into kind of data science areas a lot of the time. Things that I've played with, but I've never been a CX designer, so I'm no expert on it at all. But things that I've played with are Kajabi, because that kind of gave me some good experience in figuring out how to make marketing funnels and what they should and shouldn't look like. That sort of thing is very much all joined up. But I would say it's to me, it feels like quite a different skill. But that might just because that might be personal, I mean, personally, I really like the mapping side of things and the strategy, and I like kind of identifying the problem, and I like, in particular, discovery stuff. But if you're, interested in fast user research, and putting it and using online tools to get there, and doing tree testing and all of those sorts of things, and if you understand, how marketing is working, I think it's an interesting area. It's very, very different from the work I've been doing. So I would say if you're feeling very confident, and if you're qualified if you're confident doing quant stuff in particular and all that side of things, I would say.
Okay, probably not the marketing stuff then. I was just curious because I keep hearing, oh, that's a marketer's job, that's a marketer's job. And I'm like, it's not.
No, it's not. Yeah. No, I mean, what I do is not a marketing job at all. And I've never worked in that area, unfortunately, so I can't probably give you the best advice. I don't know if anybody else here, maybe somebody else has worked in CX.
My role is technically CX, but I sit within a design team. Yeah, in previous roles, I've worked very closely with marketing, and there is a bit of an identity crisis in terms of its customer insight, but who does it belong under? Is it the design team or is it the marketing team? And essentially, we both learn from the customer insight, but we use it in different ways. We use it to innovate, and they use it to understand what works in terms of the voice that they should be using to pull customers in. So there's a definite overlap. I see it to be. I think it depends on the company and their that you're in, and the kind of culture that they have, their attitude towards design, and also maybe their maturity towards design, if it's seen as its own department or if it's kind of lumped under marketing, because some people don't know how to place it. That's my experience anyway.
I think as well, like there's been a real split between UX and CX, and in marketing in particular, which is a bit of a shame because marketing, I mean, basically the way a lot of marketing that I've seen works, and you can correct me because I might be wrong here, right? But the personas that they're developing are ideal customers. They're not necessarily customers that they know about. And so when you take that as a UX designer and you just don't think that's a persona in the same way that a UXer would think of it, but these things can be useful. I think there's definitely opportunity to talk more with people in marketing and really understand more about how each other work.
Same.
Yeah.
I agree.
Any other questions?
I had one just about the AI transformation playbook. I hadn't heard of that before. What is it?
It's like a maturity model.
Okay.
This is your path to become an AI-led company.
Right.
So you start off by developing like your initial MVP type thing, but it must be successful is the rule. That's what they say. And we've seen the opposite of that, obviously. And then you build your team, and you run through these stages of gradually building up your expertise and your knowledge, and then kind of from there you're maybe buying big data sources and stuff like that as you move towards becoming an AI-led company. The stuff that you do in the beginning is more gold standard machine learning type projects that are small, and people seem to think like chatbots are like a good first project. I haven't had like the experience of working on one and realizing, from a user experience point of view, how complex that is and how badly it can go wrong.
Yeah.
I'd be like a little bit, maybe that's not the best first project, but it is one that I see, when you go into Coursera or any of these learning platforms, that'll be one of the things that you probably produce using AI. But I wouldn't, I mean, just how badly wrong and how angry it made customers.
Yeah.
I mean, it just made them so angry. Yeah.
It's a free-for-all in terms of what they're typing in. That's cool. Nice. I'll be sure to check it out. Sounds cool.
Yeah.
That's one. Can we maybe time's marching on. Can we quickly get questions from MM and Val?
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much. And thanks, Morna. That was excellent. I have two hopefully short questions. So the first one is, I'm wondering what helped you build some kind of a story around data and requirements for your AI project, because basically you are working with something very intangible, I guess. So it would be really interesting to hear what helped you communicate with the team when it comes to the requirements, your insights, findings.
Yeah.
And the second question, which is a bit of a rabbit hole, I guess, but I'm wondering if in your experience, people were raising any kind of ethical questions about the implications of using AI and anything that may go wrong on the user experience side.
Sure. So the first question is, using this jobs to be done format, which is really around tasks. So in terms of like the requirements, I was running through the first step was creating a visualization of the data pipeline. So that's really the end-to-end type journey. And of course, it's a pseudo journey at that point. And then finding the place that you're wanting to narrow in on, because it's going to be like the first thing done, which is normally the simplest thing done. And then working with really quite experienced and expert users to just unpack that. And I unpacked it on two levels. So first of all, we had the, I guess like the day-to-day user, not promoted, okay, user, and I would run through things and I'd go, right, tell me what you do, you know, and we'd worked it out in steps, you know, what the steps were to producing this document. And then it was like, what do you see? And what do you do? And it was those two questions all the way across until we had it kind of stepped out. Step one is you see this, you do this, or you do that. You know, you see this, you select this, or you select that. And it just really methodical approach to it in that sense. And once I'd gone through it, like with the person who's less promoted, to then bring in the more senior person to validate it, but also to look at it because it is a very technical product and people are extremely well qualified, you know, and they think quite differently. So it was bringing in people who were, you know, to make sure that the language was right and it made sense and it was accurate. And so that was like step one, you know, doing that. The follow-up would be going out to people and figuring out if that was a kind of, that's the experience universally, if that actually maps, if that's what people think it is, you know, like just testing that pseudo journey. But it's I see was the format I used there. And personas were very much the jobs to be done for personas, which, you know, like I've gone from using like an indie young type thing where you're thinking about thinking styles and the differences in that. And that's such a different process, and also such a different audience, you know, it's just very different. But when you're working in a highly managed, highly risky job, actually a lot of stuff is, you know, step by step, you know, this is how it happens. But the key thing was then working out, you know, after that, is it all going to work as smoothly as that when the migration happens? And that's the kind of trick. So that was how you built requirements. And the other question you asked about was ethics. And I would say that was something that happened before I arrived. But, you know, the ethics were, I think it's, how to say this, I'm not wanting to give away what it was we were working on because of NDA and various other things like that. So I'm trying to be a little bit vague, but it was like, it's a particular piece of software where the amount of rigor that is needed around it is quite extreme. You know, it's one of these things where you go, you know, 100% this or that. And it was, you know, when I worked at Registers of Scotland, for instance, you know, they had zero tolerance for error. And this was a similar sort of thing. So it was zero tolerance for error. And the error was in the figures that were being produced. There was zero tolerance. So it was about, you know, can we still make sure that we're ensuring that there's zero tolerance? In terms of moving people about or the data that goes into it, you know, shifting everything into a single database. Those were all things that had been, you know, happened like well in advance of me joining. So that side of the ethics had happened, you know, way back in the early planning stages.
Nice one. I'm gonna have a quick question from Val, then I've got a very quick presentation to go through myself, and then we'll have a comfort break, and then we'll get the panel. But Val, go for it, please. How you doing?
Yeah, thank you. I'll make this quick because it's not really a question, it's more of a reflection. Really like the talk. I'm going through my first AI project, actually. So a lot of the things you said really sounded familiar, although this is a very specific use case. So I think, and it was analyzed from more a strategic standpoint and what was the need of the business, and just a good point, definitely. But it's chaos in the sense of like everyone's figuring out what to do. The data scientists are new to this as well, and building it in-house. I mean, it's not building in-house. Actually, we hired a company in the US to do this, the heavy lifting, but then the idea is that we incorporate the knowledge as well. So it's very interesting for me. I've learned a lot, but yeah, there's a lot of learnings around this for everyone. And the point you made about jobs to be done, I think it's super helpful actually, because I was thinking to do that myself now. I was
Oh, good. Right. Yeah.
clarity because they're asking me, okay, now this is an experiment right now. So you visualize what this would look in the future if we want to bring it in and, implement it and within our systems and whatnot and, make it ours in a way. And I'm like, okay, how do I do that? Even though it's a very specific use case, I'm talking to the users, how do we do that? And I thought, well, maybe Jobs to them would be the right tool to do that. But yeah, sort of your talk there validated that thought. So thank you for that. And the other thing that you mentioned at the very beginning about the stats about the job market,
Yeah.
maybe because sometimes I know that there's a lot of doom and gloom
Yeah.
around the UX job market right now, and I do mentor and talk to people that are struggling a
Yeah.
lot. But I think also there's a nuance to the numbers we are seeing around that because you mentioned the statistic from 2022 and how the listings from UX jobs dropped from there, but that's the high of the pandemic and like the big hiring that happened within in 2021 and then 2022 as well, and then there's a massive drop. But if you take the statistics further back before the pandemic, you see the discipline is still growing, which is nice to see. Of course, there's a lot of new companies implementing UX, and that makes the maturity overall is quite low. And that's about what UXers I also struggle with. So that presents challenges in itself, but it's not like, oh yeah, because if you see it's down from 70%, it's like there's no job for anyone, and it's not that really. It's like it went back to something more normal than what happened and actually it happened for everyone, developers as well.
Yeah. It did. Yeah.
But just to put some nuance there, because I know that those numbers sound joking, and I'm not correcting you because actually those numbers are correct. As more, if you see the more longer picture or longer movie if you want, then it's a bit more nuanced. So people still know that there are jobs out there. The problem is that the requirements are changing around
Yeah.
and what hire managers want to see and what companies are looking for. And I think that adaptability right now is one of the key things because you might be thrown into a project like this with not a lot of context and you need to really adapt and evolve. And I think that's where the challenge lies a lot of the times. And that's it. It was, but yeah, really great points that you touched upon. So wanted to highlight that.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of messy numbers out there and it's very difficult to know what on earth is really going to happen. But I mean, I know, well, people are telling me as well, like, the first project that I showed you there, where they were making all these rookie mistakes, that has happened a lot.
Yeah.
So so they're beginning to realize that there's this disconnect and there's a need for us. And also there's I think Bobby's going to talk about it, aren't you, Bobby? The new government playbook as well, where they're saying, no, you must have UX in place.
Yeah.
So I think that changes things as well.
Yeah. Can I have another quick round of applause for Morna? Thanks for your questions. Morna, if you don't mind, can you just hit the share button again? I'll quickly do, this is only going to take a few minutes and then we'll have the break and get our panel going.
Yeah.
Thank you. Show the love.
Where do you want me to go here?
Yeah, just keep going. I've got a few scrappy notes I'm going to talk through, so this won't take very long.
Oh, okay.
So there's a quick talk, finding a job in the new world of AI, such as, oh, well, that doesn't actually even follow anymore. Like, don't use Comic Sans. That's the first bit of advice. I think the first title was job advice or something like that. Better move on to the next slide. That's just sloppy. Incidentally, I won't take questions for this, but if you want, you can use the chat if you want to follow up on anything, or if you just want to chat to each other. We'll keep it free form at this point. So here's some advice. Read the government AI playbook that's published in the UK. And this is just literally what it says. Building the team, like any other digital service, developing AI projects requires more than just technology. It's music to our ears as design and research professionals. You'll need to work collaboratively in a multidisciplinary team with diverse expertise. So the government service manual, which has been around for a few years, it says you need researchers and different kinds of designers for every tech project. So it gives step-by-step guidance on how to set up a service team. And I'll skip ahead, your minimum viable AI team. Oh, sorry. The minimum viable AI team, it needs to still consider user needs and design and accessibility requirements. And I'll come on to that. Like the families of UX jobs that we've had for a few years are still all valid. And we'll still need to use agile methodologies. Next slide, please. I said I'll move fast. So this is a case study just based on one of the things that I've done in the last year. I've struggled to find work along with everyone else, I think, in the field. But this is the kind of project I've been hired for, that I've been lucky enough to get work for. Problem, adult social care is becoming more expensive. There's the big picture. Staff are hard to recruit. Care work pays less than healthcare, so a nurse gets paid more than someone who looks after elderly people, for example. We've got an aging population in the UK, but the government doesn't want high immigration. That's the big political big picture. So what's the government going to do about it? They're going to throw AI at it to try and solve, you know, a tangle of political problems and social problems. Let's build an AI data platform. For example, let's give care home managers access to government data as well as access to people's medical records, because people who go into care might have come out of hospital. To help them make decisions. Let's design and build a new online service for them to log in and view data. Create an AI chat bot to answer their questions based on public data. Carry on, please. So if you're a service designer, this is the kind of questions which will probably come to mind out of this scenario. What would a good service for care providers look like? How would you measure to check the service works? How would you build and host the service? Do you use Amazon, Microsoft? Do you buy in all their technology or build your own? How will care providers find out about the service? What stakeholders need to be involved to make the system work, like local authorities, social work, healthcare? What data will the AI chatbot use? Can we share private data with an American corporation? Let's face it, a lot of them are very dodgy, run by oligarchs. Next slide, please. User research, what types of people need to be involved in the new platform? Care home managers, staff, the actual people in care homes. What work do care home managers do every day? What do they worry about? Is the new platform going to be useful and usable? Is it what care home managers actually need? They're going to say, no, I don't need better data, thanks. I need staff. Why have you stopped people moving to the UK to help elderly people and work in the sector? Are care home managers comfortable talking to an AI interface at all? Maybe they won't be. How do you reassure them their private data will be safe if they talk them to the AI interface? These are just a set of provocative questions which hopefully come up when you work in this kind of project. Next slide, please. Content design. If you are writing content for this new platform and finding out who you need to ask to approve this content and feed into it, what's the best way to explain a new data platform people? What the rules for registering with the platform, signing up? Who decides on those rules? How do you onboard people so they can learn how to use the platform? What's the most intuitive way to offer the pages? What's the sitemap? Next slide. If you're an interaction designer, this is often called product designer in some industries like banking, but an interaction designer is the government name for this kind of role. Should the new platform be branded like a gov.uk website, or should it have different look and feel? How will an AI chatbot appear on the platform? Is it available on the screen? Can you offer prompts to make the chatbot easier to use? Can you offer interactive maps and data visualizations to output the data? How do you make the experience accessible to everyone? Next slide, please. So that was just a quick whistle-stop tour. And I guess my point is people need UCD professionals. They still need them for AI projects, even though our jobs are changing as tech changes. If you're a little bit older, you'll remember when mobile first came along and that disrupted the UCD field and we all had to adjust to it. It's the same thing now with AI. It's not the jobs are disappearing, we're adapting to them. So a few slides of general advice, I'll just race through them. Do you agree with the following ideas? If you disagree, let me know in the chat. Next slide, please. Do what you can to pay your bills. If you're struggling, as I have over the last year, have you actually looked into a minimum wage job over the last year? Hopefully not minimum wage, but I think, you know, desperate times, you might have at least considered taking something outside the UX field. I was temping in an office on minimum wage when I was 30, and you can bounce back, but pay your rent any way you can and look after your mental health, please. Next slide. Find collaborators. If you're out of work, Scrolling through LinkedIn is depressing. Try and find people who hear you and in the same boat as you. Check in with them. Say hello to them. See how they're doing. Try forming a collective. That worked during COVID. Formed a collective with other designers. Next slide, please. Again, I'm going to go fast. Research and industry. Some industries are ready for design and research to disrupt them because they haven't maybe had design input. Try social housing, adult social care, or space tech, something which is actually people don't think about every day, but there are space companies in Scotland. Next slide. Try a LinkedIn power post. I was just laughing because I did one today and it got 1 like, but you can try like one day a week, like save up for a big post you've done some research into. Use an eye-catching image. Selfie or grungy homemade images are good. Don't use something that uses like advertising. Write about something that people are already talking about, such as the gov.uk design system, if you're an interaction designer, and people will stop and comment on it, and it generates conversation. It might lead to work. Next slide. Learn tools you're interested in. I have learned Figma, gov.uk prototype kit, D3, Leaflet, HTML, and creative coding. This, over decades, I would say. I didn't just learn these all overnight. They've kept my interest because I'm a designer. I failed to learn the following things because I'm not that interested in them because I'm not a developer. I've tried to learn React, Angular, Android, R, Python, and Swift, and I've failed. I gave up. Or I didn't even give up. I just kind of forgot I was doing it because I wasn't.
Sorry.
Carry on. Try volunteering again. Norca mentioned the Scottish Tech Army. Get CV experience. Next slide, please. Find AI startups if you can, or data-based startups. Try incubators, universities, and meetups. Build out your CV and get industry experience. Next slide. Befriend the data scientists. They're at the cutting edge of the tech industry, designing proofs of concepts and helping engineer new solutions. In a way, they've almost displaced interaction designers, but that might change again because they are the ones like creating prototypes these days. Find out how they work and how to support them with design and research, because that's the stuff they won't know about. Next slide. Learn new design patterns, such as HM Land Registry is developing AI chatbot designs. Although, as soon as I posted this today, this is the thing that got my 1 like on LinkedIn. I actually found out someone else saying, I think we actually touched on it earlier, chatbots aren't a great solution. You should probably have AI integrated into the rest of the interface. A screen like this with a big box in it, people don't like it that much. It's not that useful. Offer it in context. Anyway, that's another discussion. All right, next one might be the last slide. Thanks for listening. What else would you recommend? I warned you that I would race through that. If you've got any questions, comments, thoughts, please put them in the chat. Otherwise, I think we will take a very quick comfort break for 5 minutes, and then we'll start on the panel, slightly behind time. But that's okay. I will see you all in 5 minutes. Feel free to just, incidentally, you don't have to use the comfort break. It's for old people like me to run to the toilet and get more glass of water. Feel free to just come off mute if you want to chat. I'll be back in a little minute.